The Louie Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description.
Who else could it be? Me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the Command Post Live. Of course, I'm your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Golly, I couldn't get it out. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. That's better. So yesterday, we talked about two players that you would like to see take a step forward in year two, or just in general. I want to go through some of those comments so we can discuss some of those things. There was also another interesting conversation that I brought up yesterday about Laremy Tunsil and a potential extension for him, because I think he made it abundantly clear that he wants an extension with his comments yesterday. He was not, going out publicly saying, hey, I need to be extended. But, he pretty much said all that we needed to hear in terms of how he felt about an extension. So I made some comments yesterday. There was an interesting comment in the comment section that I would like to go over, and we'll do that today as well. But before we get to any of that, and then I got another question for you today that I'm going to ask you. Before we get to any of that, the Commanders signed yet another player. And I told you this is something that we should expect in this second wave of free agency. They're up to now 73 players with the addition of offensive tackle Foster Sarell from the Chargers. Now, I'll be brutally honest. I was not aware of Foster Sarell's game. Can't tell you anything about this dude. So I reached out to someone that I trust in the Chargers community, a guy that I rock with very heavily, my guy Craig, who also does a show over on a Chargers channel. I don't know why I'm blanking on the channel. I love that channel. I watch it all the time. But my guy Craig, me and him, we go back and forth on socials all the time. And again, when anything that happens in regards to the Chargers, or we sign a player from the Chargers, or they sign somebody from us, we always go back and forth. So I reached out to him as soon as we made the signing, because I already kind of knew this is more of a depth signing, a guy that you just throw. And a lot of these signings that you're going to see, from this point forward, and even some of the ones that we've already made, these are just throwing darts at the board and seeing which stick, right? Again, you're only going to keep 53 of these guys on your, final roster, and then you're only going to keep another 16 on your practice squad. So, a lot of these guys aren't going to be here in any capacity. And so you're trying to just throw as many darts at the board, see which ones stick, and you keep it pushing, right? So this is what he wrote back to me after I reached out to him and asked him about Foster Sarell. He says, a bunch of unrealized athletic potential dating back to his Stanford days. If I recall correctly, he had a pretty serious knee injury his sophomore season and was practically nondescript after that. He was a pet project for the previous Chargers regime, and even trained with Duke Manyweather, which is, a big coup, because he's one of the best in the business at training offensive linemen. So you hear his name, and usually good things are attached to it. He says, but is a low-level swing tackle at best. Okay. We were talking about a whole bunch of other stuff. So, but yes, that is the lowdown on Foster Sarell. The key thing there is low-level offensive swing tackle in this league, potentially. So it got me to thinking when he said low-level swing tackle at best. Who's going to be the biggest loss of this season, off-season, for the Commanders? We've gone through the list of guys that have signed elsewhere. Now, just in case you need a brief reminder, I don't think you do, but just in case you do need a brief reminder, I'm going to give you one real quick and tell you all of the free agents that have signed elsewhere. So Jonathan Allen, technically not a free agent. We released him, but he was here last year. He's no longer here this year, so we'll include him in this conversation. Jonathan Allen, now a member of the Minnesota Vikings. Jeremy Chin, now a member of the Las Vegas Raiders. Dyami Brown, now a member of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Dante Fowler Jr., now a member of the Dallas Cowboys. Cornelius Lucas, now a member of the Cleveland Browns. Benjamin St. Juste, now a member of the Los Angeles Chargers. Michael Walker, now a member of the Arizona Cardinals. Derek Forrest, now a member of the Buffalo Bills. And Olamide Zaccheaus, now a member of the Chicago Bears. So those are the players that you have to choose from. And this signing made me think of Cornelius Lucas and how reliable Big Co Luke was. You remember I told you that one hit me hard when I got off a stream with you guys, as a matter of fact. And the running joke was every time I get on the stream, as soon as I get off, something's about to happen. And in that space that we were in, every time I got off of a stream, something happened. And sure enough, after I got off that stream, boom, the news of Cornelius Lucas signing that 2-year, $10 million deal with Cleveland hit. And I was like, damn. But that's not the guy, right? Even though this signing of Foster Sarell shows you that they really, truly don't have a plan at tackle, right? After, the starters, and we're not sure what the starters even look like at this point, which is fine, right? We're not tripping about that. They have a plan. That's all that matters. But I'm not sure they have a plan after the starters, which is a problem. If, in fact, there is no legitimate swing tackle, like I'm not comfortable, and I don't want to speak for you. Let's just speak for myself. I'm not comfortable with Trent Scott being our swing tackle. I'm not comfortable if Andrew Wiley ends up being that guy. I'm not comfortable with that because a swing tackle is supposed to be able to play both tackle spots, which is why he's called a swing tackle. He can swing back and forth from left to right. Cornelius Lucas can do that very effectively. Now, I think the plan would be, if I had to guess, if anything happened at left tackle, and assuming that they just took Brandon Coleman and moved him from left tackle to right tackle, I would assume that in game, if something were to occur, you take Brandon Coleman, move him over from right tackle back to left tackle, and you insert Andrew Wiley at right tackle. Again, I don't like moving around guys. I hate playing musical chairs on the offensive line to fix one position, right? Because you could make two positions worse when you do that. I hate doing that. This is why a swing tackle is important, because if you have a guy you trust as a swing tackle, you don't have to do any of that shit. If something happens to the right tackle, put the swing tackle in. If something happens to the left tackle, put the swing tackle in, and you keep it pushing. However, they'll figure it out. I trust in them. I'm not really too concerned, right? They got all these darts that they're throwing at the offensive line board. I talked about Aneem Dankwa yesterday. Don't know what he's going to be, if he can factor into any of this. Again, we have no idea what's going to ultimately happen. Not really truly that concerned right now until it becomes a problem. It's not one right now, so I'm not tripping about it. The guy, however, that I think we're going to miss the most, and I think this is highly underrated, and I brought it up last year, and to me, this offense was its most dynamic when Dyami Brown hit the lineup and offered you something that we currently don't have on this roster right now. And I remember going through the pros and cons of losing Noah Brown. And I remember I had a slide up for you guys, and we went through the pros of Noah Brown, having him in the lineup. But then I went through, the pros of Dyami Brown being in the lineup. And the biggest thing that we added that I don't think you could quantify, but you could clearly feel and see the impact, was speed opposite of Terry McLaurin. Because with Dyami Brown in the lineup, you truly have someone else that could run and stretch the field vertically, because it's so easy to just take your middle of the field safety, have middle of the field closed, and then just take that guy and lean him towards Terry's side. Who else is running on the other side vertically that you care about? Nobody. Noah Brown drew the pass interference penalties, but you're not afraid of Noah Brown running by you. You weren't afraid of Jamison Crowder wasn't even trying to run by anybody. Neither was Olamide Zaccheaus. You weren't afraid of any of those guys running vertically on you. You had no other receivers that even gave you a threat of something vertical. Dyami Brown was that guy. He did it in the Cleveland game. He did it in the second Philadelphia game. He did it against the Lions. He gave us another vertical threat that could stretch the field when you were paying too much attention to 17, thinking that there's nobody else that can get vertical on you. Oh, shit. Here's number 2 going over the top, making a big play, right? We don't have anybody else. And obviously, there's still plenty of time for them to address that. I'm just not sure that they are going to do that. I don't think any of us look at Luke McCaffrey and think, there's our vertical threat right there. It ain't Deebo Samuel. I can tell you that right now. It's not Deebo Samuel. He is not stretching the football field vertical at all. Okay? It's not Noah Brown. God knows we tried to throw it to him vertically last year. He did not successfully win, I may add. He did draw 3 pass interference penalties, and I talked about that a ton. But I'm looking around at the roster, and I'm saying, okay, who's getting vertical opposite of Terry? Other than Terry McLaurin, who can stretch the football field vertically? Crickets. Any names? Anybody? Now, again, this could still be addressed in a draft, right? They could still draft a receiver with some speed. I was thinking more along the lines of some size. Like, I was looking for a guy with some height that could go get the football. Not that Noah Brown doesn't check that box, but we could use more, right? But, I mean, a guy with some size and some speed would be nice, right? Why not do both, right? We've talked about a couple of names that would check off both of those boxes. But when it's all said and done, we don't have enough speed at the receiver position right now. KJ Osborne isn't running by anybody. That was never his forte. That is not his forte. Okay. They brought back KJ. They brought back Noah Brown. Again, I'm fine with both of those guys being back, but neither one of those guys stretched the football field vertically. Obviously, you got Luke McCaffrey, doesn't stretch the football field vertically. You got Deebo Samuel, doesn't stretch the football field vertically. To me, the guy that you are going to miss, not from a route running or any of that stuff, just another guy that has the speed to threaten a defense vertically. You're going to miss Dyami Brown's speed. We saw that at the end of last season, how dangerous of a threat he was stretching the football field vertically and giving defenses another guy that they had to account for, taking the top off. There's no one else here but Terry. And while Terry excelled last year, was one of the best deep ball receivers in the NFL last year, it is so nice to have a guy take the pressure off of you, because early in the season is when Terry did most of his deep ball damage, because, again, teams wanted to see what Jaden Daniels was going to be, able to do, what he was made of. And so Terry got those one-on-one looks as the season progressed, right? Because you think about a lot of the deep balls. Week 1, he was open against Tampa Bay. Terry was open by probably like 5 yards, and Jaden just missed him. First play of the third quarter, as a matter of fact, missed him. The next week against nothing against the Giants the next week. The week 3 was when Terry finally started to break out, and that's when him and Jaden really started to have that connection. He had the deep ball, the 2 deep balls, the one down to the one and the other down for the touchdown to put the game away, essentially. Week 4 against the Cardinals, no deep balls in that game, but you did have the Noah Brown pass interference penalty early in the second half. I want to say it was the first possession of the second half to set up a touchdown that really started to help us put that game out of reach. Week 5 was against Cleveland. That was the big one where Terry should have stepped out of that tackle on that dynamic, escape the pocket, hurdle or leap out of a potential sack from the backside, and then he flung it like 60 yards in the air to Terry on a dime. And Terry catches it, should have been able to step out of that thing and score. Instead, he gets tackled. And the sad part about that was we didn't get any points on that drive because Jaden threw his worst interception of the season, you could argue. against the Browns there in the red zone. So we didn't even get any points out of that thing. But another example of Terry getting loose vertically in that game. Dyami also scored a touchdown vertically that game as well. Then there was the week 6, nothing against the Ravens, but he made a bunch of big plays in that game. Week 7 against Carolina, nothing in that game, but Jaden was out anyway. That was more of the Marcus Mariota show. He was really getting the ball to all kinds of guys. Ben Sinnott scored his only touchdown of the season. Dyami got off in that game a little bit. Everybody was getting a little something in that game against Carolina. Week 8, obviously Terry had the big catch down the sideline against the Bears. But remember, we could not score touchdowns to save our life in that game. We had no touchdowns up until the Hail Mary at the very end. But he had the deep ball against, I want to say it was Stevenson in that game. Then I'm trying to think. He had the week 9 against the Giants, no deep balls, but he had the 2 touchdown grabs in the first half, both against your boy, which he was talking shit because your boy was talking shit last year on IG Live. So Terry got a little bit of get back against Deontay Banks. In week 10 against Steelers, Terry had the slant in that game that could have went to the crib. He had a really big game. He had the catch down the sidelines. That was sort of a deep ball where he got his feet in, which was a gorgeous catch by Terry. Week 11 against Dallas, the offense just didn't function at any level until the end of the game. But obviously he had the 56-yarder at the end of that game. And then I think I skipped over week 11 with the Eagles, the first game, and then Dallas was week 12. The only other deep ball I think he had after the week 12 86-yarder against Dallas, and I could be wrong about this, is I don't even know if we call this a deep ball, but it was, I guess, against the Eagles when he cooked Quinyon Mitchell for the touchdown in the week 16 game. I mean, after that, you really didn't see him get vertical. Teams really were hip to that. Again, he actually got open like 3 times against New Orleans right after the bye week. Unfortunately, him and Jaden, for whatever reason, could not get on the same page in that game. Almost cost us, but I digress. All I'm telling you is it was so nice at the end when teams started to really focus in on Terry to have Dyami be able to step up and use that speed vertically to threaten teams and really give them another dimension that they had to worry about. We don't have that, is essentially what I'm trying to get at. And so I'd love to see them do something to offset the loss of Dyami Brown's speed. Not necessarily his production. Obviously, we're not going to miss Dyami Brown's production if there wasn't a lot there, right? And I think we've already replaced his run after the catch because we really don't have anybody that has the ability to go run after the catch. Dyami was that guy as well. Well, we got Deebo Samuel. He's way better than him in that regard. But Dyami's speed was definitely felt last year. And for the first time really in his career, his speed was a problem, something that teams had to be aware of. We don't have another guy. We don't have another guy right now that can run. So that, for me, is the guy that I think is going to have the biggest impact in terms of a loss. As of right now, obviously, things are subject to change. There's plenty of time between now and September when this season kicks off. We've talked about that ad nauseum, about how many more opportunities the Commanders are going to have to add players to the mix that are impactful. None bigger than the draft at this point. So in my mind, that's where it's going to come from. If we do add another guy that can stretch the football field vertically, it'll probably be the draft. But you never know, right? Again, Noah Brown was added right before the season started after, those final round of cuts. So you just never know when that player is going to present themselves to us. But feels like the draft if they're going to do it. Right now, we do not have another vertical threat opposite of Terry McLaurin. So with that said, let's get to some of the comments from yesterday, because I thought some of these were really interesting. So yesterday I posed a question to you guys, and which was essentially, Give me 2 names of players that you want to see step up next year, and you needed to see growth from. And I said mine were 2 guys that are going to be second-year players. And I said yours could be second-year players, or it could be 2 guys that's just on the roster. It doesn't really matter. But I was more so talking about second-year players. But I also had a couple of other conversations that we had. One about trading Deron Payne, the other about Laremy Tunsil wanting an extension. So we'll go through these comments real quick and talk about the ones that stuck out to me. Down at the bottom here, oh, you can't see everything here because I can't scroll up any, but well, maybe no, you can't see it if I do that. So this one is from JJ18057. And we talked about Deron Payne. Some people asked yesterday specifically if trading Deron Payne is something that you could see that I could see coming. And I was like, nah, I don't really see that happening, but I wouldn't put anything past, Adam Peters at this point. But JJ18057 makes a great point, because I did say yesterday that it would make more sense to trade him this year in terms of the value of what you would get in a Deron Payne trade if you decided to do it this year, because he's got 2 years left, this year and next year, on his deal, versus trying to trade a guy when he's only got 1 year left on his deal. But JJ says this is not the year to trade Payne. Too much dead cap and not enough cap savings. So those are things that teams also weigh that I wasn't thinking about. Now, generally, that's one of the last things I think about when I think about moving a player is, well, what's the dead cap number, and how much of that do you have to eat, and are you going to save any money, and how does that all factor into the decision-making process? Obviously, it does. My guess would be that you'd be willing to take that cap hit if you were getting back enough compensation for Deron Payne, right? You'd be willing to do that. It just depends on how severe of a cap hit we're talking. Sometimes when you trade a player, it accelerates that number and it makes it a lot higher, and it balloons it a bit, and it makes that player almost untradeable, or it doesn't make enough sense for you to move that player unless it's an untenable situation. So I don't see Deron Payne getting traded, and that might be another reason as to why he wouldn't get traded. But I still wouldn't rule anything out. Somebody right here on the next one, DM-KQ9RI says, "Morning, Lou," and they basically went on to educate me on Jordan Mailata. I said he was from England. He's actually Australian. Then they went into, explaining the difference between, England and Australian, rugby, et cetera, et cetera. Interesting comment if that's for you. Then we get into some of the comments. I got Munson 8866 says 2 players I would love to see take a leap: Quan Martin and Tyler Owens. Quan going into year 3, Owens going into year 2. It'd be interesting to see what happens with T.O. They love him on special teams, but do they love him enough as an actual defender? This is a big year for him to show that maybe he has value as an actual defender. Right now, he feels like solely a special teams player, but if he makes a big enough leap in that department, who knows? He could be in there potentially getting reps on defense. Special teams right now is his calling card. That's why he's going to be here. We'll see if in the preseason we see leaps and bounds from him as an actual defender. Quan Martin is a guy that they absolutely love defensively as a single high safety. Now I want to see Quan Martin be more impactful. They trust him as a last line of defense, getting guys on the ground. So do I. Can you make plays on the football? Obviously, the Detroit Lions pick 6 gets you excited. It lets you know that the potential is there, but can he make plays on the ball? That ball was thrown to him. It was an overthrow. Can you go get it, right? Can you go read the quarterback's eyes, jump a route, pick something off? That's what we want to see from Quan Martin. That's the development we'd like to see from him moving forward. Matt Golumbek writes, I could see Tyler Owens taking a big leap, and Newton needs to take a big leap, he says. So Owens is a guy that's becoming one of those fan favorites because of the athleticism. It's off the charts, and you would love to see him turn into something. Newton, obviously, as a second-round pick, you want to see more from him. You've moved on from Jonathan Allen because you feel like Johnny Newton should be able to take his place. We'll see if he's able to do that or not. Payne and B-Rob from House of for Ministry. Payne is, I told you this feels like a contract year. It's not a contract year. Obviously, he's got 2 years left, but it feels like he could be the next on the list. He could be Jonathan Allen next year. Could Daron Payne if he doesn't have a big season. B-Rob, it feels, I mean, they still like, it kind of feels like they're in the same boat, both of those players, to me, honestly. I could see a situation where obviously this is B-Rob's final. So he is in a contract year. This is B-Rob's final year of his rookie contract. Right now, it doesn't feel like he's going to be re-signed here. That's what it feels like. Okay? Things can change. He goes out, has a monster year this year, rushes for 1,400 yards. I highly doubt that because I think they're going to bring in running back reinforcement in the draft, and that's going to take away opportunities from B-Rob. And in order to rush for that kind of yardage, you got to hit some big ones. I just don't see B-Rob hitting any big runs, really, right? So it feels like this is it for him in Washington anyhow, but it'd be nice if he stepped up. People are already quitting on him. People are already counting him out. So we'll see. Raymond Johnson says Payne just needs to step up. Come on, bro. I think he's referring to people who want to trade him. I just want Daron Payne to get back to the 2022 version that we saw. I don't know if that guy's ever coming back. I've already reconciled in my brain that he's never coming back. But boy, would I love to see that guy again. Here's a great opportunity in 2025. Brian Butler says Luke McCaffrey and Tyler Owens. So Owens, again, this is the third time we've heard T.O.'s name. Luke McCaffrey. He's so interesting because you go get Debo, you bring back Noah Brown, and you feel like, okay, well, that pushes him down all the way to at least, at best, the fourth option on this team. I think KJ Osborne is probably ahead of him, honestly speaking, but Luke could, second year in the system, he could be ahead of KJ, but I can't see him being ahead of Noah Brown or Debo or Terry, obviously. So he's at best your fourth option. We'll see. We'll see what year 2 looks like for Luke McCaffrey. Dominic DeShazo says Ben Sinnott and Johnny Newton. So another Johnny Newton. Obviously, Ben Sinnott, I think we're going to hear his name a few more times. Same with Johnny Newton, obviously. But yeah, when you spend second round picks on guys, you want to see production from them, obviously. So I don't really need to explain that. Let's see. Brian Bird was talking HU, which is Howard University. We were talking about Aneem Dankwa yesterday. So this is an interesting conversation just as we're bouncing around. Derek B. We were talking about Laremy Tunsil, and I brought up the fact that Derek B. and I were having a conversation on social media about Laremy Tunsil wanting an extension, which is why Derek B. thought he had gotten traded to us in the first place. And I said, I don't think you're necessarily wrong. Money is usually at the root of any good player getting traded, right? So I said, I'd like to see what he could do here first before extending him. What if you get him and he's not the guy that you thought you were getting and you've already committed to him on an extension? And it could go both ways. And this is the other side of that. So Derek B is essentially playing devil's advocate. He says, I say give Tunsil a 2-year extension now. We gave up 2 day 2 picks for him, which we gave up 1 this year and 1 next year, 3rd this year, a 2nd next year, right? He says that's 2 4-year contracts. He says, which he's not wrong, right? 2 4-year contracts, a 2nd round and a 3rd rounder. Anybody you draft after the 1st round is a 4-year contract as long as they stay on your roster. But yes, he's absolutely spot on. He said it doesn't make any sense to not invest in him and plan for him to be here at least for the next 4 years. 3 years from now, when Tunsil wants another extension, we'll have had time to draft and develop his replacement. The cap hit from Jaden's extension will just be kicking in, and we can move on. 2 years for 60 mil now is better than 3 years for 120 from a year from now. First of all, here's the only argument that I have with his statement, because everything that he said is true. I get it. I understand. You're better off being out in front of something and being wrong than waiting and being wrong, right? If you're going to be wrong, you'd rather be wrong and already have paid that player than to wait, and then you want to pay that player, and now you have to pay more, right? Because even if you paid and you're not satisfied, there's always a way out. Now, it might be a little painful, but it's a way out and you're not going to pay as much. If you're satisfied, but you're waited, you're going to pay a lot more. But I don't think the 3 years, 120 is the price tag, right? 2 years, 60 right now sounds about right. 3 years, 120, that means 40. Yeah, right. No way. Not for a 30. At that point, 32-year-old Laremy Tunsil is not getting $40 million a year. That's crazy. So I get it, though. I understand where you're coming from. So that's a really interesting argument. Let me hit the likes while I'm here on these comments. Should have been doing this from the jump. I intentionally didn't hit them yesterday when I looked at them because I wanted them to all be in one place. All right, let's keep going. Raymond Smith says, Sennett and Newton for me again, same two that we just talked about. It's 2 second-round picks. You really want to see those guys flourish in year 2. I don't blame you guys, right? I do what I got to do, says, I'm guaranteeing Tunsil holds out. I don't see that happening. Now, is this the last we're going to hear of this extension? I don't think so. I mean, I think that's part of, again, to Derek B's point, I think that's a huge part of why the Texans traded him. He was already, starting to balk at the notion of not getting paid. And he had already, because he's his own agent, much like Bobby Wagner, he represents himself. So I'm pretty sure he made it known to the front office of the Texans, hey, I'd like an extension now. I see all of these guys getting all this money. I know I'm better than them. I'd like to be paid. And they're like, all right, bet. We heard you loud and clear. And it was like, hey, we got to get him the hell out of here because we got other guys we got to pay. So we'll see if, and again, Adam Peters traded for Tunsil knowing Tunsil wanted to be paid. He didn't just find out Tunsil wanted an extension once he got here. That wasn't the first time he heard of Tunsil wanting an extension. All right. He knew the situation he was getting himself into. DeAndre says Tyler Owens will be the third rotating safety and Javonte Jean-Baptiste will be the starting edge first or the first edge in the rotation off the bench. That's interesting. That's interesting. He was in the mix last year. He was not the first guy off the bench. Be interesting for him because that was obviously last year, Dante Fowler Jr. Be interesting if he were able to jump all the way up to that first guy off the bench. That would be really interesting if he is in fact not the starter. I don't see him being the starter here in Washington at any point of his career. But could he emerge as the first guy off the bench? That'd be interesting. AA Ron Heritage writes, Lattimore and Tyler Owens, and then he threw in Wiley as a guy that was on the practice squad. Lattimore obviously has to step up. I don't need to explain to you why that's a big deal. We need Marshawn Lattimore to be good for us this year. Owens is another guy, again, a fan favorite, a guy that a lot of people, because of his athletic profile, are starting to cling to. We'll see what happens there. Kenny Schools writes, are one-year contracts motivated by the team brass, hoping they will hit on their draft picks? It could serve as a form of motivation, but I think one-year deals are less about motivating players and more about how you feel about that player. If you truly feel great about a guy, you're going to give him a multi-year deal. You're not going to keep going year to year. If I'm not sure about you, or I'm not sure about your long-term fit, or I just see you as a Band-Aid solution, you're not the surgery we need, you're just a Band-Aid solution to get me by, that's a one-year contract, right? He says, before you said rookie needs to improve, like I said, you could name anybody. It's all good. JBWC writes, Ben Sennett and Tyler Owens. So again, two names we've heard quite a bit. He says, I know I've given two already, but I got a third. Just like you, he says McGee is my third. And I think McGee has a huge opportunity this season to prove that he's ready to take over the mantle at middle linebacker. That's what they drafted him to do. This is his opportunity to prove it in year number 2. Or else they'll be looking for another guy in, the draft next year, more likely than not. Joe Burtz, 4780 writes, 2 players I want to see take a leap in year 2 are Ben Sennett and Javonte Jean-Baptiste. Lord knows we need someone to step up at edge. Amen to that. I don't know if it's going to be him, but hey, why not, right? Why not? Julio Fuentes writes, I really want to see Jordan McGee take off and have a Pro Bowl year. And I don't know about Pro Bowl year because I don't think he's going to get enough snaps to do that. However, I do want to see him take off and show that he's ready for that mantle, that title of being the signal caller of this defense. We could use an infusion of athleticism and speed at the linebacker position. Love Bobby Wagner, but obviously he's not the athlete he once was. But respect what Bobby brings to the table. Love Bobby. Glad he's back. But we need Jordan McGee to step up for sure. Mask collect. If you look at the teams that do a really good job of stopping the run, like you look at what the Chiefs did against Saquon in the Super Bowl, the first thing I think about, their defensive line was really good and they penetrate and they get into the backfield, but it's all about those linebackers. Nick Bolton was constantly around the football, blowing shit up. They tried to throw a little swing pass to Barkley in the flats. Nick Bolton blew that shit up for like a 5-yard loss. Like, you need linebackers to do that kind of stuff, right? Mask Collector 6949. Another conversation we had yesterday, somebody brought up, was Kyron Lacy, the wide receiver from LSU who's gotten into a ton of trouble, was wrapped up in a murder investigation, all of that good stuff. I don't know if any team's going to touch him with a draft pick, but I could see somebody giving him a shot, taking a flyer on him as an undrafted guy, or even a 7th round pick. Somebody throws a flyer at him with a day 3 pick, late day 3. Mass Collector says, keep Lacy away from JD5. We got to keep a good thing a good thing. I don't know if I necessarily disagree with that, right? I don't know if I disagree with that at all. Mass Collector also says, need to see growth. Let me go ahead and like this one. Need to see growth from more growth from Senate and Sainer still. Sainer still needs to turn the corner from good to great for this team to get to the next level. Senate, because I'm tired of people trying to replace him, getting impatient, LOL. Interesting that he chose Mikey Sainer still, but I want to see what that year 2 growth for Sainer still looks like, and it's tough for me to put him in this conversation because we asked so much of Mikey Sainer still last year. We drafted him to be a nickel, yet we played him primarily outside last year. And right now, we don't know what the plan is for him moving forward. You brought in Jonathan Jones because Jonathan Jones, much like Mikey Sainer, still undersized, but can play both inside and outside. Will Jonathan Jones allow Mikey to stay outside? Because the word out on the street from the Patriots is that Jonathan Jones can play both inside and outside, but he was better inside than he was outside. So does that mean that Mikey's going to stay outside? I don't know. And you got Noah Igbenogany as the guy that can back up both of those spots, but primarily a nickel, right? Again, I don't know. Or is Jonathan Jones being brought here to play outside? You're going to kick Mikey inside, which, again, if you're kicking Mikey inside, that's pretty much year 1 for him inside, because last year he played 2 games inside before we kicked him outside against Cincinnati. So, and he never went back inside after that. So it's going to be tough to ask him to just take this massive leap if he's playing a different position, right? But that's just my 2 cents on the subject matter. Obviously, Senate, we've mentioned him 50 times, and we all know why. This is a comment about linebackers. I just don't think I see them doing anything about linebacker this year. I could be wrong. I just don't feel like they're going to do anything at linebacker necessarily this year. Brian Bird says, thanks for saying Aneem's name right. I try, right? I try. I don't always get it right. I try. 420 Terrence says, Johnny Newton and Senate. Again, you spent 2nd round picks on both of those dudes, so I get it. Cool Beans writes, running backs, B-Rob need to step up and be upgraded in safety positions. B-Rob's 800 yards total last season and 36 yards versus the Eagles in the championship game ain't cutting it. Can't put that all on B-Rob. It's not like there were massive holes and he didn't extract all the yards that were there to be got in that game. I don't think we were dedicated to running the ball in that game. Remember, the first 8-9 plays were all pass plays. They made it abundantly clear that they weren't going to try to run the football effectively in that game. We thought that establishing the run or some semblance of it was going to be key in that game, and clearly they had other plans. We're going to put the game in Five's hands and let him take us to victory. And if not for the turnovers, he might have been able to do it. Questionably, they let Chin, Fowler, and Zacchaeus go, while McCaffrey, Noah Brown haven't been standouts, shaking my head. Wagner can't cover in zone. He's a weak link and a liability. If I need to give you a speech in the locker room for you to do your job, I don't want you on the team. That's not how that goes. You know, these guys don't need that type of motivation, but it doesn't hurt, right? I didn't give you a speech when you signed the contracts. Can't cover in zone. Well, he's not the guy he used to be, obviously. You know that. That's why you drafted Jordan McGee, who is better and is more live in zone coverage and in space, right? Can we get a secondary that actually can contest the ball while it's in the air, bat it down instead of just watching the ball get completed for first downs? St. Juice was always around to play, but never contested anything. Why wasn't the Eagles linebacker Oren Burks looked at? Shaking my head. They didn't want him. And again, I don't think they were planning on doing this is the thing. They have their own LBs here, right? Jordan McGee and Dominique Hampton that they've been developing. They like those two guys and they want to see what they look like, right? So bringing in an Oren Burks stunts their growth. It's no different than an NBA young player needing minutes. You can't bring in a veteran in front of that young guy. If you want that young guy to get minutes, you have to remove that veteran from the equation. It's the same thing here. You don't want to bring a veteran into the mix because if you do, that veteran's going to play more likely than not. Like if Jordan McGee had already showcased and stayed healthy last year and showcased what they thought he was going to be last year, I'm not sure Bobby Wagner's here. But because he didn't, Wagner played so well in his absence. And Wagner was going to play anyway, right? But McGee would have played too. And if he would have shown them, there's a question. And look, Wagner could have still been here regardless. But they would have been more confident in Jordan McGee's ability. And now you're going to get year two of Dominique Hampton. And I think they're looking for big things. I think that's the reason you don't bring back Michael Walker, because you got Dominique Hampton and you're ready to take the red shirt off of him. So anyway. Loft TM 969 says, not sure if you noticed from the mic'd up in the playoffs, but Bobby Wagner gave Jordan McGee the ball from that fumble he recovered. He didn't give it to Jordan McGee. I don't think he gave it to McGee. I think he gave it to Dominique Hampton, if I'm not mistaken. You could be right. It could have been Jordan McGee. I think it was Dominique Hampton. Bobby definitely sees him as an apprentice that he very much respects. Imagine being an injured rookie, 5th rounder, and Bobby Wagner gives you a game ball. So I could be wrong. You could be right. It could have been Jordan McGee. I thought it was Dominique Hampton, but that's nor here nor there. The fact that he respects all those guys in that room, that linebacker room for sure. Anyway, I digress. All right, so that was yesterday's conversation. Shout out to everyone who participated in that. Really appreciate you guys commenting in the comment section. Really interesting discussions yesterday that we had on the show, and it made for some interesting comments in the comment section. So I've given you a question for today that I'd like you guys to respond to, not necessarily saying that we're going to have this same discussion about the comment section and what you guys have to say. If there's some interesting comments that I feel are worthy of it, then we may do that again. But I always see your comments regardless of whatever the case may be. So if you are interested in answering the question that I posed, and I'll repeat it again, who will be the free agent that the Commanders will feel the impact of their loss the most? And I've given you the list already. So leave it in the comment section of this video. I've given you mine already. Contrary to popular belief, I know some of you thought I was going to go with Dante Fowler Jr. Some of you probably thought I was going with Cornelius Lucas. Those are great options, by the way. Mine is Dyami Brown, and not because of his production. Once again, he was not super productive while here. We all know that. What he did bring to the table is something that is invaluable if you're trying to take pressure off of Terry McLaurin. Deebo Samuel, in his presence here, will take pressure off of Terry McLaurin just because there's another guy that you have to keep tabs on at all times, where he is on the field and knowing where, what he can do with the football in his hands. However, if we're talking about stretching the football field vertically, We don't have another guy right now that can do what Dyami Brown did. That's why I felt like Dyami was so important last season, because even when he was on the bench, you just never knew when two was going to get in and have an opportunity to make a play like he did against the Eagles. We're backed up against our own end zone, and Jaden Daniels drops back and lets it rip, and Dyami Brown runs right past Darius Slay. And I remember Darius Slay talking about Jaden Daniels' arm. He's like, yo, when he was on that podcast, he said, yo, for him to be so goddamn skinny, he got a big ass arm. Like, pause. He's like, I didn't realize his skinny ass was going to be able to throw the ball that far. And he's talking about that Dyami Brown play, because he let it rip on that play. And that thing traveled probably 45, 50 yards in the air on the money, as Dyami Brown ran right past Darius Slay. So Dyami Brown can run. We saw it in that Detroit game when Jaden just let that bitch fly, right? And he's running all the way across the field to track that thing. And Jaden put tremendous air under it so he could go get it. But that thing was in the air forever, and Dyami had to run a far way to go get it. And with a guy draped all over him, hand over his face mask, that's the perfect throw, obviously. But he had to go get that thing. And that required speed. And so we don't have anybody else that can do that. So anyway, I digress. No comments for me in the comment section. So I am going to get out of here. Commanders signed Foster Sarell. I already gave you all the information I had on him. I reached out to my boy Craig, who is a massive Chargers fan, covers the team, on their channel that they have. Let me tell you the name of the channel. Give my guy some love. Lightning Round Podcast is the name of that channel. And he is a contributor to that channel, Lightning Round Podcast. Love that channel. They do great work over there talking about the Chargers. And he said, low-level swing tackle is your best hope. This guy has little to no experience in the league playing. Was undrafted. The Ravens had him. He never suited up for the Ravens. Then went to the Giants, I believe. Never suited up for the Giants. Then ended up with the Chargers, and was primarily a special teams player, and just a backup reserve tackle. Got a little bit of run with the Chargers, but nothing significant, right? So, just another dart you throw at the board, and hope it sticks. But I think there's a real conversation about swing tackle, right, with the loss of Cornelius. Something we really haven't had to discuss for the last 4 years with Cornelius Lucas here. The last time we had to discuss swing tackle was 2020 when Cornelius Lucas got here, because we weren't actually familiar with his game at that point. But he established himself that first year in 2020 as being a reliable swing tackle, one that we often asked, should he be starting? That is no longer the case. Okay, we do not have a guy that is sitting on the outside looking in and saying, should that guy be starting? So we'll see what happens. Anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on the Command Post. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. More likely than not, I will be live later on this evening with a LouieTeeNetwork podcast episode. Tomorrow, the Commanders Kings will ride again. So look for a stream from the four of us tomorrow night over on the Commanders Kings channel. And then we will be live here on Thursday night. Got a big show for you on Thursday night regarding the Commanders, as we will have a big look at this roster. So tune in for that, obviously. But until then, I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. Until next time, you guys have a good one. Take care. God bless and good night.